The morning after Kale's first encounter with the dragon, the village of Brighthaven hummed with quiet tension. The villagers moved like shadows among the stone cottages, casting wary glances toward the clearing where the dragon rested. Some whispered about the boy's courage, others about the dragon's fury, and still others speculated on what forces might come next. Kale stood on the edge of the clearing, the dragon towering above him, wings folded but still casting a vast shadow over the grass. Draxus, the name Kale had given the creature, after a faint whisper in the dragon's mind, shifted its massive head, looking toward the northern mountains where the dark banners had disappeared the day before. "They'll come back," Kale murmured, feeling the weight of the Sky Herald mark throbbing against his chest. "And next time they'll bring more than a handful of men." "They always do," Draxus rumbled, smoke curling from its nostrils. "But you are no longer alone. Courage is contagious, Kale. Watch, learn, and prepare." Kale nodded, scanning the horizon. He knew that survival would depend not just on bravery but on strategy. He had learned in his childhood to track animals, to read the winds, to anticipate the weather, and now he would have to read armies, dragons, and the fragile courage of men. From the village's northern edge, a scout emerged, running swiftly with a panting breath. "Kale, they're coming. Hundreds, maybe more. I saw them over the ridge. Dragons, too." Kale's eyes widened. The first real test had arrived. Not a single dragon but a full contingent, armored riders astride dragons, black banners fluttering, eyes set on the same clearing. The scout gasped, barely able to catch his breath. "They'll reach the village in under an hour." Kale's mind raced. Hundreds of riders, each with their own dragon. Brighthaven cannot withstand this alone. He turned to Draxus. "We need a plan. We can't just meet them head-on, they'll overwhelm us." Draxus flexed its wings, shaking the morning dew from the edges. "No, we cannot fight blindly. But we can strike with precision, with fear and awe as our allies." Kale drew a deep breath. "We'll lure them into the valley where the cliffs and forests will limit their numbers. We can use fire, the terrain, and the villagers who are brave enough to stand with us." "Do you think we can?" "We must," Draxus rumbled. "The Sky Herald cannot falter. Lead them wisely or the first battle will be the last." Kale gathered the villagers who had proven their courage the previous day. He spoke firmly, every word measured, every pause deliberate. "Today we fight not just for ourselves but for the dragon, for Brighthaven, and for the chance to protect the world from those who would enslave it. I will not lie to you, this will be dangerous. But courage is not the absence of fear, it is action in spite of it." Murmurs of fear mingled with determination. Slowly more villagers stepped forward. Farmers grabbed axes, hunters readied longbows, and a handful of young warriors, mostly children of the blacksmiths and millers, stood at the front, faces pale but resolute. Kale turned to Draxus. "We'll need you to create a path for them, force their formations to break. You can fly, strike, and retreat, use your fire sparingly but decisively." The dragon's eyes glimmered, gold reflecting the rising sun. "I will follow your lead, Kale. But remember, even a single misstep can turn allies into casualties." As the first shimmer of movement appeared over the northern ridge, Kale's pulse quickened. The horizon was alive with motion. Hundreds of mounted riders atop dragons, their scales glinting in the sun, wings beating in unison, sending gusts that rippled the trees and sent birds scattering into the sky. Black banners waved ominously, each dragon rider a testament to years of discipline and battle. Kale gritted his teeth. "Hold your positions. Wait for my signal. And remember, we fight for life, not for vengeance." The enemy dragons descended slowly, testing the wind currents, their riders scanning the valley below. Kale could see the glint of weapons, the flash of steel, and the faint shimmer of magical wards flickering over some of the dragon's scales. These were not ordinary raiders, they were disciplined, trained, and deadly. Draxus shifted slightly, wings unfurling, casting a massive shadow over Kale and the villagers. "We strike with the first wave. Fear will be our weapon as much as fire. And remember, always retreat to safety when necessary." Kale's eyes narrowed. "Understood." Then with a nod, Draxus leaped into the air, claws scraping the ground as wings unfolded fully. The wind howled around them, carrying the scent of ozone and fire. Kale raised his staff, signaling the villagers to release flaming arrows. The first volley struck the approaching enemy, hitting dragon scales and startling riders. Chaos rippled through the enemy formation. The Sky Herald and his dragon had made their presence known. Kale's heart pounded as he guided Draxus through the air, weaving between the attacking dragons with precision, striking with fire only when absolutely necessary. The villagers followed his instructions to the letter, arrows raining upon enemies, setting small flares that created illusions of larger forces. For a brief, intense moment, Kale realized the full magnitude of his responsibility. Every decision, every movement could mean life or death, not just for him but for the dragon, the villagers, and the very balance of the surrounding lands. The enemy adapted quickly, however. Riders coordinated their dragons, flanking from multiple directions. Kale gritted his teeth. Draxus, fall back to the forest edge. Use the trees for cover and wait for my signal to strike again. The dragon responded immediately, diving low between ancient trees, blending with shadows. Kale signaled the villagers to retreat along the ridge paths, guiding them with precision, forcing the enemy to spread out and lose cohesion. The first battle had begun. The forest shook under the beat of hundreds of dragon wings, the air filled with the metallic tang of burning leaves and the cries of startled birds. Kale ran along the ridge path, signaling villagers to follow the narrow trail he had scouted earlier. Each step was measured, each glance toward the skies calculated. Above him, Draxus weaved through the air with precision, diving between the towering oaks and forcing enemy dragons to break formation. The villagers, though terrified, followed Kale's guidance. Farmers with axes and spears, hunters with bows, even a few apprentices of the blacksmith clutched their small daggers and flung firepots where Kale directed. Fear was present, but so was determination, a spark Kale nurtured with every word. "Hold steady," he shouted. "Do not rush. Wait for my signal." One enemy dragon swooped low, its rider swinging a glaive with deadly precision. Kale ducked just in time, feeling the rush of wind as the blade sliced past. Draxus responded instantly, fire flaring from his maw, singeing the edge of the attacking dragon's wings. The rider lost balance and fell, the dragon screeching in pain as it spiraled away. Kale felt a thrill of triumph, tempered by the knowledge that many more were coming. He could see the enemy leader now, a tall figure atop a jet-black dragon, scales glinting with dark magic. The aura surrounding him was oppressive, each beat of his wings sending a shiver through the air. Kale's heart sank. Whoever this was, they were not just a soldier. They were a commander with knowledge and power that far exceeded anyone Kale had faced. "Draxus," Kale murmured, "we need to take them down together. Precision, not brute force." "I understand," Draxus rumbled, eyes narrowing, nostrils flaring with smoke. "But this one, they are strong. You must be ready for anything." The black dragon dove toward the village ridge, its rider calling out orders that carried magically, reaching the other attackers. Enemy dragons adjusted instantly, coordinating strikes to surround Kale and Draxus. The sky was alive with motion, fire, steel, and wings slicing through the wind. Kale signaled the villagers to release a second volley of arrows. This time he combined the attack with Draxus' aerial maneuvers. The dragon darted between enemy lines, firing blasts of controlled fire that created barriers of smoke and flame. Riders who had thought themselves safe were thrown into chaos, some losing control of their mounts. "Keep moving," Kale yelled, guiding the villagers along the ridge path. "Do not stop. The enemy wants to trap you here." Amid the chaos, Kale noticed a group of riders attempting to flank them from the valley below. He cursed under his breath. "We can't let them surround the village." He looked to Draxus. "I see them," the dragon's mind thought rumbled. "We strike now, quickly and decisively." With a beat of immense wings, Draxus surged toward the flanking dragons, dodging fire and claws with preternatural agility. Kale leapt from a boulder, staff raised, directing villagers to ignite more firepots and hurl them into the path of approaching enemies. Flames erupted along the valley floor, smoke curling upward and forcing the enemy dragons to adjust their flight paths. Several riders lost control, falling from their mounts into the dense trees, their dragons crashing with terrifying force. Kale's mind raced. The villagers were doing well, but this was only the first wave. The enemy leader circled above, jet-black wings glinting in the sunlight, eyes locked on Kale and Draxus. Every instinct in Kale's body screamed caution. "Draxus, we need to lure them closer to the cliffs," he shouted, pointing toward the narrow canyon just beyond the ridge. "We can use the terrain against them." The dragon banked sharply, wings slicing through the wind, fire blazing from its mouth in warning and intimidation. Kale watched as the enemy dragons hesitated, their formations faltering as the narrow paths below offered little room for maneuvering. Then the enemy leader descended, eyes fixed on Kale. The black dragon's wings kicked up dust and debris, and Kale felt the sheer power radiating from it. He steadied himself, remembering the dragon's words from the previous day, courage, wisdom, trust. Kale took a deep breath, gripping his staff tightly. We fight together, Draxus. Now. With a thunderous roar, Draxus surged forward, flames spewing from his maw in arcs that split the enemy formation. Villagers flung arrows and firepots with renewed courage, striking at the chaos the dragon had created. Horses stumbled, dragons screeched, and riders fell, some fleeing in terror. The tide of battle had shifted, even if only slightly. Kale felt the pulse of the Sky Herald mark thrumming against his chest, a guiding force as he coordinated each movement. Do not hesitate, Draxus urged in his mind. Strike where it counts. Protect the weak. Lead them wisely. The enemy leader swooped down, blades flashing, trying to intimidate Kale directly. Draxus met him in the air, claws extended, fire erupting in a brilliant burst that forced the black dragon to retreat upward. Kale felt a surge of exhilaration mixed with fear. He was learning, yes, but the enemy was skilled, cunning, and far from defeated. Smoke, fire, and the echoing cries of dragons filled the air. Kale realized that this battle was more than a fight, it was a test. Not just of strength, but of strategy, courage, and the bond between human and dragon. Every arrow, every fire blast, every command would shape the outcome. And every mistake could be fatal. The first hour of the clash ended in a tense stalemate. Enemy dragons regrouped above the ridge, circling like predators, while Kale and Draxus landed temporarily behind a boulder for cover. The villagers, exhausted but alive, huddled together, their eyes wide with awe. Kale breathed heavily. We've slowed them, but this isn't over. We need a plan to break their formation completely. We need to strike at their leader or we can't win this fight. Draxus lowered his massive head, smoke drifting from its nostrils. I sense their weakness. A single coordinated strike, but you must act decisively. Hesitation will cost lives. Kale clenched his fists. Then we strike decisively. Together. Above the ridge, the black banners fluttered, signaling the enemy's readiness for the next wave. Kale's jaw tightened. The true battle was only just beginning, and the first clash of clans would shape the war to come. The enemy dragons circled above the ridge like a storm ready to break, their wings beating in unison, stirring up gusts that tore at the trees and sent loose stones rolling down the valley. Kale crouched behind a jagged boulder, staff in hand, as Draxus flexed its wings, readying for another strike. The villagers huddled behind him, tense but determined, their earlier fear replaced by a fragile courage born of survival. We need a distraction, Kale whispered, eyes scanning the black banners. Something to scatter their formation and give us an opening to target their leader directly. Draxus' gaze flicked toward the western cliff, where the forest thinned and jagged rocks jutted skyward. I can create a path. I can strike in tandem with you. But timing must be perfect. Hesitation means death. Kale nodded, heart pounding. Then we do it. Everyone stay ready. He rose, raising his staff to signal the villagers. Hunters and archers stepped forward, firing volleys of arrows coated with flammable oil. Firepots streaked through the air, landing among the enemy dragons, forcing them to adjust their flight paths. Several riders struggled to maintain control, their dragons screeching as flames licked their wings. From above, Draxus dived. With a mighty roar, the dragon released a torrent of fire, targeting a cluster of enemy dragons attempting to flank them. The flames erupted like a molten wave, throwing horses and riders into chaos. The villagers took advantage of the disarray, firing arrows and hurling small firepots into openings, striking enemies who had thought themselves safe. Kale's pulse raced as he tracked the enemy leader, a tall figure on a black dragon, scales shimmering with a dark, unnatural gleam. The leader's eyes burned with fury, scanning for Kale and Draxus. They're preparing a counterattack, Kale said, voice tense. We need to strike before they regroup. Draxus' wings beat with immense power, carrying Kale higher into the sky. The wind whipped around them, the scent of smoke and ozone thick in the air. Kale clung tightly, staff ready, eyes fixed on the enemy leader. Now, Kale shouted. Strike together. Draxus lunged, claws extended, flames blasting from its mouth, forcing the black dragon to veer off course. Kale leapt from Draxus' back, spinning through the air, fire streaking past him, and landed atop a narrow cliff ridge, staff planted firmly. Below, the villagers moved into position, using the rocks and trees for cover. The enemy leader's dragon screeched, circling low to strike Kale. But Draxus was already in motion, swooping down to intercept. Fire met fire, claws met claws, the clash echoing through the valley like thunder. Kale watched in awe as the two dragons collided midair, their massive forms twisting and turning, flames erupting in every direction. The villagers, emboldened by Draxus' ferocity, pressed the attack from below. Spears, arrows, and firepots rained down, striking enemy dragons already struggling to maintain formation. Chaos spread among the attackers. Some dragons veered off wildly, others crashed into trees or rocks, sending riders tumbling to the ground. Kale realized this was the moment to strike at the enemy leader directly. Using the ridge for leverage, he launched himself toward the black dragon, dodging fire and claws with precision. Draxus followed closely, providing cover, and together they closed the distance. The enemy leader met Kale's approach, sword gleaming, magical wards flickering in a protective barrier around him. Kale swung his staff with precision, deflecting a strike, then leapt backward, landing safely on a narrow ledge. Draxus roared, a signal that Kale understood immediately. Distract him. Force him to break his focus. Kale nodded and began improvising, hurling small firepots in calculated arcs, creating a haze of smoke and light. The black dragon flinched, its rider's attention divided. Kale seized the moment, charging forward, staff raised high. With a final coordinated strike, Draxus lashed out with claws and fire, knocking the black dragon off balance. The enemy leader's magical wards flickered, weakened by the assault. Kale lunged, striking the leader's helm with his staff, sending him tumbling from his dragon's back. The black dragon let out a terrifying roar, wings thrashing wildly. The leader hit the ground with a thud, dazed but alive, his army faltering as they watched their commander fall. Panic spread through the enemy ranks, dragons veered off course, riders struggled to regain control, and chaos became complete. Kale, breathing heavily, watched as Draxus landed beside him, smoke curling from his nostrils. Well done, the dragon rumbled. You have shown courage and wisdom. But remember, this was only the first battle. Many more are coming. The villagers cheered, rushing forward to aid the wounded and gather what they could from the battlefield. Some looked at Kale with newfound respect. Others simply stared in awe at the dragon, understanding for the first time the scale of power they had allied with. Kale's gaze lifted toward the horizon, where the remaining enemy dragons retreated, regrouping beyond the northern ridge. He knew this was far from over. The battle had been won, but the war was only beginning. We have struck our first blow, Draxus rumbled. But be ready. The enemy will not forget. And forces far greater than these riders are already moving. Kale nodded, determination solidifying in his chest. Then we prepare. We train, we plan, and we become stronger. Whatever comes, we will face it together. The sun rose higher, illuminating the clearing, the fallen riders, and the triumphant but exhausted villagers. Kale felt the weight of responsibility pressing against him, heavier than any physical burden he had ever carried. He was the Sky Herald, the bridge between humans and dragons, and the first clash of clans had tested him beyond imagination. And yet, as he looked at Draxus, standing tall and proud, Kale knew that they had survived. They had won not just with fire and strength, but with courage, strategy, and the bond between human and dragon. The enemy forces had retreated beyond the northern ridge, leaving a trail of chaos in their wake. Broken trees, scorched earth, and the remnants of fallen riders marked the battlefield. Kale and Draxus stood side by side, breathing heavily, wings and firepots singed but victorious. The villagers gathered around, a mixture of awe, relief, and newfound courage in their eyes. Kale's gaze swept over the aftermath. We've survived today, he said quietly, but the enemy will not forget. They will return, stronger, smarter, more prepared. Draxus exhaled a plume of smoke, curling gently into the morning air. They always do, the dragon rumbled. But you have learned something today. Courage is contagious. Strategy matters. And unity can overcome even the strongest foes. The villagers approached cautiously at first, then with greater confidence. Farmers who had trembled with fear now carried arrows and spears, proud of their small victories in the battle. Hunters shared what they had learned from tracking animals, how to anticipate movement, where to hide, and how to use the terrain to their advantage. Even the blacksmith's apprentices helped tend to Draxus' wings and Kale's staff, reinforcing them with metal braces and enchanted oils to withstand future battles. Kale knelt beside the dragon, running a hand along its jagged scales. You fought bravely, Draxus. And I did my best too. We protected the villagers and we survived together. You did more than survive, Draxus replied. You led. You guided the humans and yourself through the chaos. That is what makes a Sky Herald. Not just courage but wisdom, vision, and trust. The villagers murmured in agreement, their fears slowly transforming into respect. Harlan, the village elder who had doubted Kale from the beginning, stepped forward, staff in hand. His eyes were wide, reflecting both awe and fear. You saved us," Harlan said slowly, voice trembling. "I did not believe it possible, a boy leading a dragon, a village standing against such force, but today you have proven it." Kale straightened, swallowing the lump in his throat. "We did it together. Draxus, the villagers, and we all faced this trial. And we all survived because we worked together." Harlan nodded slowly, finally understanding that Kale's leadership and the dragon's power were not to be feared, but respected. The villagers began to discuss plans for reinforcing defenses, preparing fire traps, and training to defend themselves. The first seeds of strategy were planted, born from survival and courage. As the sun climbed higher, Draxus stretched its wings, lifting into the air with a grace that belied its size. Kale climbed onto a nearby boulder, raising his hand in salute to the dragon. "The first battle is over," he thought. "But the war has only begun." Draxus circled above the clearing, eyes scanning the horizon. "We must prepare for what comes next. The enemy will not relent. Their leader is cunning and their forces are many. But remember, you are the Sky Herald. And where you lead, humans and dragons will follow." Kale felt the Sky Herald mark pulse against his chest, a constant reminder of the responsibility he now carried. He looked down at the villagers, seeing their eyes filled with newfound courage. He realized that the bond between humans and dragons had begun, fragile but unbreakable, and that together they could withstand storms that seemed impossible. Suddenly, a scout returned, running swiftly through the clearing, panting but urgent. "Kale? More riders are coming from the eastern pass, larger forces with dragons bigger than any I've seen." Kale's pulse quickened, but he did not falter. "Then we prepare," he said, voice steady. "We train, we strategize, and we become stronger. Whatever comes, we will face it together." The villagers cheered quietly, not out of triumph, but out of determination. They had survived their first true test alongside Kale and Draxus, and they were ready to defend their home again. Kale climbed onto Draxus' back, feeling the connection between human and dragon strengthen with every heartbeat. "We will face them," he thought, "and we will prevail." As the sun set, painting the valley in shades of crimson and gold, Kale and Draxus soared above Brighthaven. Below them, the village prepared for the days to come, marking the first steps of what would become a legendary bond between humans and dragons. Somewhere far beyond the horizon, the enemy leader watched from a high peak, his eyes burning with fury and calculation. He had underestimated the Sky Herald and his dragon. Next time he would not. And Kale knew, deep in his heart, that the real war was only beginning. Above the clearing, Draxus roared once, a sound that echoed across the valleys and cliffs. Kale responded in kind, raising his staff high. The first dragon battle had been won, but the clash of clans would continue. And together, human and dragon, they would face the storms ahead, united and unbreakable.